Listen, if you all wanted
There
to
you
tell me that I sounded weird, you could have just told me weeks ago when I first started showing up consistently.
We thought you knew. We thought you knew.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the BTB Movie Club podcast. My name is Mike Hilty. We hope you enjoyed today's movie discussion. Thanks for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the BTB Movie Club. My name is Tim Larson. We're here to discuss movie number 201. And that movie it was picked by Mike Hilty, who just got home from a lot of traveling. It is 1921's The Kid, written, produced, directed, acted in, music composed by the one and only Charlie Chaplin. Hilty, welcome back to the good United States of America. The discussion is yours.
So, before we start, a couple questions for the group at hand. How many of you have seen a silent movie before this? Nope.
Just
Are
Does
you all
Mel
being
Brooks does Mel Brooks a silent movie count?
sure, I guess?
No.
I've seen pieces of them, but I've never seen one from start to finish.
Okay. Um, and I guess subsequently, because Charlie Chaplin actually has acted long enough that he did act in a bunch of movies where he spoke. So, has anyone seen anything by Charlie Chaplin before?
Nope.
All right.
Just bits and pieces of stuff, but no.
Okay. Cool. Well, this is going to be then an interesting conversation because I hope that at minimum, I hope that there is at least somewhat of a slight appreciation for the physical comedy craft that Charlie Chaplin has. His movies, on the other hand, I get it. They're not for everybody. And a silent movie also is not for everybody as well, because it does require a certain level of paying attention that we always don't have the bandwidth or the attention span, or at the end of the day, also a desire to want to pay attention to, because it's not like you can hear the dialogue. You just have the music. That's really about it. And it does require you to pay attention a little bit more closely to how people are interacting with each other and the emotional cues and everything like that. So, with that being said, I've seen The Kid a couple of times. It is among one of Charlie Chaplin's more personal stories. So for instance, not too long before he either produced or before this was released, I think it was before they started filming, Charlie Chaplin did lose like a 10-week-old child or something like that. So this to him was very personal. And this also, the conditions that the tramp lives in during the movie, it also is very much like what Charlie Chaplin lived in when he lived in England before he came to the US. So in a lot of ways, this is very personal, very not like completely autobiographic, but something that I've read that Charlie Chaplin and a lot of biographers have said that this is a personal favorite of his. Um, I'm not sure if this is a personal favorite of mine with his, because there's just this, it's a short movie, it's quick, and then also there's just a couple things in it that kind of just make me scratch my head a little bit, but we'll get to that in a minute. So let's just go around, and I would like to start with Aaron. We'll start with Aaron. Um, what did you think of The Kid?
Um, I really liked it. I thought it was a delightful movie. Man, from start to finish, had never you had brought up never seen a full Charlie Chaplin, movie before. I've seen his, speech um from where he's, being Hitler, or he's a Hitler type character. I've seen that a lot. I've seen other clips, I've seen him accept awards, stuff like that, but never seen, I'm going to say I've never seen a full silent movie, kind of like what Brian was saying. Can't really remember. Maybe I have, but I'm considering this my first that I actually paid attention to, sat down, watched on purpose. from start to finish. And I'm interested to see what you're going to say from your intro there, the parts that had you scratching your head. Now I get there's maybe a couple, and I might touch on something similar, but like to me, I thought it was great. I was blown away by how good it was. The story, the having to give the child, right from the start, having to give the child up, or not having to, but trying to do what she probably thinks is best. Obviously she's not with the husband, who I'm assuming the husband, seemed longing and lovingly at the picture, but then it burned up and he just kind of went on his way. And
He was
that's
just
all
like,
we really see of him.
just like, I can't save this.
But
Fuck it.
yeah, the way he was
I'm
looking at
done.
it, like, I loved her. I got to find her. We can make this right. And then like it got a little burnt on the edge, and he was like, "Oh, well, that's over," and finished burning it up. So
Right.
It was like
I've
a
done that.
Seinfeld move.
I've done that
Right.
myself, I believe.
But I also saw that, like, you talked about the length. Tim had brought up this is going to be the shortest film that we've watched. But I think they made just about every second count for everything. So the note that she puts obviously in, this person who has a car, she's thinking this is going to be a better life, not the way you would hope that giving up an orphan, or not really an orphan. That was the only other thing. Was it an orphan? Because isn't that it was referred to as an orphan a couple times, I think, that I read, but not really an orphan. Anyway, giving up the baby, whatever it would be, an abandoned baby, hopefully not the way it's supposed to happen. Maybe a fire department. But like I said, this is a long time ago. She thought she was doing what was best, put it in a rich person's car. They had a nice house, nice car. This is going to be a life. If these people accept this kid, it's going to be a much better life than she could provide. Trying to do what's right in a desperate situation. And I've taken probably 10 times the amount of time that Charlie Chaplin took to get the same point across in what I was just saying there. So, but the note, I loved how the note moved through the right people at the right time to come back. Cause there was a couple times I'm thinking it's a guy's kid. And like, how is this ever going to work out? Cause you could kind of maybe see, especially when she, showed her life had turned around and she was a movie star, or at least actress. Life was good for her. You could see her, the kid's going to get back to her. And it was like, how are they going to do this with a piece of paper? But then, she wrote the paper. It ends up in the doctor, very well done. How it all flowed through the right people at the right time. The other thing I wanted to talk about, because it blew me away, at the start, I think it was maybe at the start and at the end, it had said who the different actors were, and it named the kid as being a name I want to say I'd heard of before. Didn't do any research to look it up.
Yeah, you know him.
Who is
Jackie
it?
Coogan.
Yeah, why do I know that name?
Does anybody else have this?
He's Uncle Fester in the
He's
Addams
Uncle
Family.
Fester in the Addams Family.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't even know how I knew that. But cool. What a great actor for a kid with, no sound. Like when he was in the back of the truck.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, obviously it's like kind of over the top acting for that time, but why, just his please and dad, and, you could just see him pouring his heart and soul into it. And I was like, wow, the little kid has got it. And then the next biggest thing, he had to have done other things other than Uncle Fester. I'm assuming he had a long acting career.
He was also in, he played Tom Sawyer in Tom Sawyer and then the Huckleberry Finn movie. And he was also, oh shoot, I just saw it. Oliver Twist. He played Oliver Twist in an Oliver Twist movie.
Wow. I didn't know that. So really cool. But like I said, just he knocked it out of the park. I think he was the shining star of the whole thing. Just great chemistry between them. The fight scene, well, one, the car getting stolen makeup was a little iffy. And I don't know, maybe in our high resolution TVs, we were seeing it, more of a line right here
Right.
than they would have seen on a movie theater in, the 20s. So that little things like that stood out, but you cannot blame it for being, over 100 years old. The dream sequence where he goes to heaven, when it first went into that, I thought it was a little weird, but then I ended up really even enjoying that. Um, you know, the message it was getting across, with the corruption of heaven and everything, and I don't know, I just really liked it from start to finish. Good pick. I'll let the rest of you guys talk a while. But yeah, really love the kid, the movie, and the actor.
The dream sequence, to be honest, is the only part that I would say kind of scratch my head a little bit because I think I think that was added in for a couple reasons. One, because if you have a dream sequence like that and it gives you the opportunity to have like a little bit more quote unquote fantastical or action elements. I mean, Charlie Chaplin got to like fly on
Yeah.
on well, a bunch of people did. And that was the only part that made me like scratch my head a little bit. Otherwise, yeah, I fully agree. The thing that you said that I'm glad that you said it, and to kind of kick that off is that it does make every minute count for a movie this short. Um, we get movies nowadays that are like average now 2.5 hours, and you don't get the same amount of heart in this that you do in those movies. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And you brought up The Great Dictator as well, because um, that speech is now it's well known because it is it's one of those things where Charlie Chaplin did want to say something about it, and he has been criticized a lot, or he was criticized a lot for, you know, people viewed him as someone who's trying to drive America into the war, in World War II and everything like that. But he said that since the tramp unfortunately does look a lot like Hitler, he felt the need to say something and take a big political and a big risk in Hollywood as well. So, I almost picked that because I was wrestling around because I did ask a couple people if I should do one type of movie or another type of movie. And the one I suggested was Charlie Chaplin. And I wrestled with a couple movies of his, and I settled on the kid because the other well-known movies have sound, like more sound in them beyond music. So I wanted everyone to see a truly like 100% like silent movie. It didn't dawn on me until you said it, and I think a couple other people have said it, that this movie is over 100 years old. It kind of blows my mind that this is 100 years old. So, I guess for one other question for you, Aaron, do you have a favorite part or a favorite sequence or even a favorite quote unquote line from the movie?
Um, uh, I liked the time that they spent in the apartment, the room,
Mhm.
um, cooking, eating, getting ready. I just like the busyness of it all, with as dire as their situation was. Um, it seemed like a great relationship. Um, they worked to run their scams, but it wasn't like they were plotting their
Mhm.
scams, all night long or whatever. It was just what they did during the day. But like their home life was like normal, you
Mhm.
know. Um, the this stack of pancakes was ridiculous, but
Mhm.
um, and then even the little syrup when the kid poured the syrup on his plate and then he was just eating the syrup with the knife instead
Mhm.
of but yeah, if I was to say any scene, it would just be like the relationship building that they did
Mhm.
in that room.
Yeah.
And I know they came back to it 3 or 4 times. They spent different times there, so it wasn't just one scene. But I did like the scenes of just the two of them. Other than the scene when the kid was getting taken away and when he's in the back of the truck,
Mhm.
that is like the saddest, and it becomes like the funnest. Who knew Charlie Chaplin throughout the movie was such a badass, you know. Um, skilled fighter in deception and illusion, or alluding.
Yeah.
So I'd say the scenes in the room.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this is true, but my oldest son had come in and watched it for a while, and one of the things he said was, I think one of the first things he said, he was like, "Oh, um, something like the unfortunate victim of the toothbrush mustache." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, I think that's what they were called before they were called Hitler mustaches.
Mhm.
You know, it was just considered a toothbrush mustache." And once again, didn't look it up, just kind of believe him on that kind of stuff. Um, but it made sense. And then I was like, yeah, but he wore it, 20 years before Hitler did. It should be a
Mhm.
Charlie Chaplin mustache, not a Hitler mustache. But you
I
know,
I wholeheartedly agree with you on that because I hate that it's, you know, Hitler sporting a Charlie Chaplin. It's not Hitler sporting a Charlie Chaplin mustache as opposed to the other way around, which is now, oh, Charlie Chaplin's got a Hitler stash. That I
right.
hate that, but you know, it is what it is, I guess. One last thing I'll say is that the relationship between Jackie Coogan and Charlie Chaplin. So they had a really great working relationship on set, and you're right. For Jackie Coogan to go toe to toe with Charlie Chaplin, who arguably at this time is probably one of, if not Hollywood's greatest stars at this point, because not a whole lot of other people out there had the consistency and longevity at the time that Charlie Chaplin had. So there's an old story that says that Charlie Chaplin and him and Jackie Coogan, they kept in touch throughout the years, and there came a point where Jackie Coogan kind of fell on hard times. And in a desperate plea, he went to Charlie Chaplin and was like, "Is there anything that you could spare?" And Charlie Chaplin, without thinking, just gives him like $1,000 and be like, "Make sure, like, just take care of yourself. Let me know if you need anything else." And that relationship continued pretty much all the way until Charlie Chaplin's death in the 70s. So that does make me happy that they had a relationship that lasted that long. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the way that like Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford looked at Ke Huy Quan at the Oscars a couple years ago when he won, because they're just like, "I'm so incredibly proud of you for, for getting to this point." Um, I would think that Charlie Chaplin would look at Jackie Coogan in the same vein as that.
Yeah,
So
it's cool. It's good to know.
cool. Um, Tim, you're up. What did you think of The Kid?
Same boat. I really enjoyed watching this from beginning to end. I'm just going to mirror a lot of what Aaron just said because I also got to the dream sequence and was like, what the fuck is going on here? But then as soon as he gets woken up by the cop and dragged out, I was like, okay, I totally get it now. My reactions in the beginning when I started writing this, I thought silent movies were a lot more silent. Like music is going through the whole thing, you know? And I was a little surprised by that and kind of enjoyed it. Didn't know until after I watched it the first time that Chaplin also composed the music. I knew the rest of the stuff he did, but I just figured somebody else put music on top of it. But Jesus Christ, what a talent! Uh, God, especially for the time. I mean, nobody's at that level. I mean, he's the only one working at that level. That's just incredible. I wrote down in the first 5 minutes of it that the transitions were very short and there's a lot of that circle focus in and transitioning out stuff that it reminded me of Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry, and it was like really important to the story. Like the transitions of setting up the story was otherwise it's going to be another 2 hours, so he quickly gets through the setup part of the story before you can get to that relationship that Aaron's talking about in the apartment. And I thought that was just really cool. And then I was just floored because you're watching this and you're like, okay, this is ancient stuff here, over 100 years old, one of the earliest, when it says awkward ass after somebody dumps the ashes out of the roof and it lands on his head. And maybe you're the better historian here for this kind of stuff. When movies first came out, Hollywood didn't have the rules that they applied later about swearing and anything sexual and anything revealing. Early on you got away with more of that stuff until Hollywood established some rules. And I know I've heard it before, but I don't remember exactly why or how that came into play. But as soon as I saw Awkward Ass, at first I was like, how did that get by? And then I remembered that there's some history with that and you could get away with more stuff like that. And just another weird thing, and maybe this isn't a weird thing, but the door to the apartment was the address was 69. I was like, that's not a coincidence, and that would not have flown by in the 50s. Really enjoyed so there's a mix between drama and comedy here. And I read in one of the reviews that was written at the time that was innovative, that
Yes,
somebody was
very,
putting
very
comedy
much
with
so.
drama in the same story. And if so, if this is the first movie putting drama and comedy together historically, if that's accurate, then I'm going to double down on my Jesus Christ about this guy being talented, because that's a game changer for the entire industry. And so I think I love that you picked this. I think this is historically a monumentous movie instead of just a cool thing that was made a long time ago. I wrote down that baby's got to be 105 years old as I was watching it. I also wrote, did Hitler idolize Charlie Chaplin? I enjoyed the kid throwing rocks, doing the old school wind up before throwing it, right? Like some of that old comedy stuff is just kind of precious. All of the comedy scenes that were physical in nature about chasing somebody around was really cool. Getting chased by the cop, going back and forth and running around in circles, and the bully's older brother taking swings at him and him dodging the punches, jumping in a window and out a door, like all of that stuff. I just I thought was really, really endearing from an older time. I was just enjoying watching something that, you know, people don't make movies with that kind of physical comedy anymore because it's kind of played out, but it was nice to go back and look at it. The hand thing at the window was awesome. He's flirting with the cop's wife, and it's just like lighthearted, innocent flirting going on there. And then all of a sudden, the cop's got his hand on his shoulder, and I just really enjoyed that scene. It just, I don't know, there was something graceful about how awkward it was, but the physical comedy was so on point that I really enjoyed that stuff. I wrote down that the bully's brother is wearing 10 sweaters. That guy, he, I think he stole that from Friends, because Joey wore a whole bunch of sweaters when that girl was hitting him too much. And like he turned around to fight at one point and you could see it was puffed up. Like,
Yeah.
like, does he have a fan in there? What's going on? Um, I just wrote down the scene with the fight with the doctor. When he loses his shit, like it's all a bunch of cute fighting beforehand, you know, with the brick and ducking and then slapping him in the head and, you know, running around. It's all cute physical comedy, but when they go to take the boy, he loses his shit in that room, and man, does it come across. I mean, that kid, Jackie Coogan Jr., acts his ass off through the whole movie, and Charlie Chaplin trying to fight all three of those guys in the apartment is emotional. It was emotional. So that's the dream sequence is a little weird, but then you're just kind of bringing it to an end. And flying around on the wires was pretty cool.
Mhm.
So that's my take on the movie. I think it's great. There's some background stuff. Jackie Coogan Jr. was doing vaudeville stuff, and Charlie Chaplin saw him and was like, I got to write a movie around this kid. And so he becomes the first child actor in Hollywood history. So there's a whole bunch of firsts for this movie. Then Hilty talked about him, you know, coming on to hard times. His parents blew all his money, and that became a law. It was written down, at least what I saw, as the Coogan bill,
The Coogan bill. Yeah.
and that was child actors. The
The
parents can't blow the money. That's got to go into a fund for the kid till they turn
Yep.
18.
That's
That
how I know the name. I
that
just watched
oh,
a
okay.
10-minute special on the girl from Even Stevens, who had done other things too. But,
Mhm.
you know, and she, you know, but she talks about the Coogan law or whatever. And like her parents didn't spend all their money, they spent most of it, but then she blew a lot of it too, being 16 and thinking she was rich forever. But
Mhm.
that's definitely where I've heard the
Okay.
term recently.
Well,
Yeah.
Like, because that was just this week.
Yeah, that's a famous phrase, so that makes sense. And then, yeah, Charlie Chaplin's background, Hilty, everything that I read, Hilty kind of already explained it. And that he did have a son who died, an infant son who died. I thought I read it was 10 days before they started shooting this. So he already
Oh,
had the idea for it, and he already had Jackie Coogan lined up. Then he lost his son, and I'm sure it was going through this process was, an artist using art to grieve, right?
mhm.
So maybe that's why there's a little more involved here, like emotionally in some of those scenes where they're really giving it. Um, and then also not the best story. The flirty angel in the dream sequence is Lita Gray. She's 12 years old in that sequence, and she came across Charlie Chaplin again when she was 16, and they started dating when he was 35, and they had to get married because she got pregnant. And they had
Cool.
two, yeah, yeah. They had two kids together, and then they got divorced, and the divorce was really messy. And she set a record for the largest settlement for a divorce in the history of the United States of America at $600,000. Um,
Charlie Chaplin, a movie star through and through, even the
yeah,
ridiculous shit that he's
yeah,
got going on.
yeah. It's rich and famous.
Mhm.
Like what's holding rich and famous people back from being what kind of people they want to be? I guess I don't know, but it's also 100 years ago, so uh, you know, I don't really even know how to begin processing that, but she became quite a famous actress herself, though. She's in quite a few things, Lita Gray is. So um, that's interesting. So that's yeah, I'll end on a downer there with that part of the background story, but just I don't know, there was just something really genuine and honest about his physical comedy.
Mhm.
That's what I noticed that I really enjoyed. Like it didn't seem like he was trying too hard.
Mhm.
Like we talk about over actors like Jim Carrey or, Dan Aykroyd, I would call an over actor in a lot of his roles. Um,
How dare you?
yeah, I know that's not always the most popular opinion, but that's my truth. But I
Mhm.
didn't get that feeling from Charlie Chaplin at all. He's just giving an honest performance, and it's great, and I loved it. So thank you for picking this. I'm so glad I watched it.
So two questions I have for you, and this kind of piggybacks off of something that Aaron said as well, is that um, this Jackie Coogan Jr.'s performance in this, I think sometimes gets a little lost in the shuffle in terms of like all-time child actor performances. So I'll just kind of open it up to anybody. Does anyone have any other child actor performances that I'm not saying like stacks up against this, but it's like, holy shit, this was actually really good and brought something to the table because I feel like we've watched enough movies to know that child actors are very hit or miss, and a lot of vast majority of the times, let's just call it what it is. They suck because they don't know what they're doing because they're kids. So, but there's a rare occasion where they kind of just rise above and they're like, wow, this you're going somewhere, kid. So I'll open it up. Does anyone have any other child actor performances that they're like, yep, this is this was really great.
I mean, a couple of them jump to mind from the last 20 years, but another side of that is what happened to that actor after they became famous. Like the Home Alone kid. Can't remember his
Macaulay
name.
Macaulay
Culkin.
Culkin.
Yeah,
Well, and
and
that's what I was just gonna say is, and it might be easier to separate these between like comedy and dramatic performances. Because
yeah,
I think a dramatic performance is way harder for a kid to pull off.
that
Mhm.
makes
There's
sense.
I think some funny kids. There's kids who have said funny lines. Macaulay Culkin, star, complete star, great actor in comedies.
Mhm.
Haley
I don't
Joel Osmond in Sixth Sense
right.
comes to mind.
Mhm.
And even if you're talking about Macaulay Culkin and it's one where he gets stung by the bees.
My
My
Girl.
Girl. Yeah.
He's great in it. The girl steals I mean, the girl
Sure.
is,
Anna Klunsky. Yeah.
kills you.
Mhm.
He was in a where he's an evil
Yeah,
bastard
yeah. The
with, I
The
believe he's
good
with
stepson
Elijah
or
Wood.
Elijah
something.
Wood.
Good
Yeah.
son.
The good son. Yep.
That's acting. I mean, he did a great job in that one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
That bullshit.
right.
But
Oh, hold on. Like all of that. The only thing that I will say about that is, um, Macaulay Culkin holds down Home Alone pretty good, and he does the majority of it on his own. So, for him to do that, kudos to him. But to your point, yes,
Well,
he does have a little bit more range than some people give him credit for, and he hasn't gotten back to his heights as he was as a kid, but he's he's still acting and he's still not bad in a lot of
right.
stuff.
To that point, sticking with Macaulay Culkin, like in Uncle Buck, he's not the star, but he steals just about every scene he's in Uncle
Yeah.
Buck, in the comedy scenes, with just his mannerisms, and his cute voice and, whatever. I would say, I know it's not the best movie, but there are others to pick of Drew Barrymore as a
Mhm.
child.
Oh yeah, Firestarter and
Firestarter's
E.T..
good. Yeah,
E-
E.T.
E.T. is one that gets routinely, pointed out as him or her and Henry Thomas, who plays Elliot, as best child performances of all time, both of them. Again, it's hard to quantify that because, Aaron, I fully agree with you that separating between drama and comedy is important because it does take a degree of difficulty for both. But I think you're right, drama does require a little bit more maturity and nuance and everything like that too. But um the but one of the thing that Tim said though is the the birth of the quote unquote dramedy is kind of here because you know Tim's right, back in the 20s and like when movies first started coming out, is that you had one genre, you picked a lane, and then that's it. You don't really go back and forth between them. And that's one of the things that Charlie Chaplin did kind of present as an option for Hollywood, is that why does everything have to be just one thing? Why can't it be everything? Because human life, it's not all just comedy or drama. You gotta mix both of them. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Tim, because that is something that this is known for. That it does mix both, I would say, equally well, because you're right, that scene where Charlie Chaplin, where the tramp is fighting to get John, right? That's his
Yep.
name in the movie, John back. Unless you're like a robot or you just, super cynical about stuff, you have to be affected a little bit about that. All right. Before I get to Matt, I'm going to read Wilden's notes because he just sent me a list of things, and I'm just going to read everything. Sorry I can't be there. I'm sick and need to sleep. Here are my notes on the kid as I watched. First note, he said, "Tisk tisk, leaving a baby in a car, although that action is immediately out awfuled by the guy pulling out a gun as his first instinct when he hears a baby crying, and then leaves the kid by a trash can in an alley." Brian's board this week should say awkward ass, which it does not. So Wilden's wrong on that. Man, that woman beats the shit out of Charlie Chaplin, which I'm assuming is
with an umbrella.
the woman who the tramp is trying to like unload this kid off of somebody else who's got kids already. And yeah, that whole sequence, that woman does beat the shit out of him. So I find myself chuckling at Charlie Chaplin's antics early on. I feel bad for the actual baby. It looks like that kid absolutely hated the production of this movie. I hate to break it to you, Wilden, but that is, I think, literally every baby during production, because they're being forced to do a lot of things that they probably don't want to do and they'd rather be doing something else like playing or sleeping. So, um, Charlie Chaplin accidentally creates the first Snuggie. Yeah, that's probably accurate. Yes, a child fighting ring. This is much less objectionable than before. I mean, this movie is over 100 years old, so my favorite part in that sequence is right as the kid the bully is, the tramp is declaring him the winner and everything like that. The boy just comes in and just clocks him one last time. And it kind of just comes out of nowhere, but I laughed out loud pretty hard after after seeing that the first time and this time when I rewatched it. The police in this movie are useless buffoons. In this movie, withstanding, okay. Oh, you're poor. Well, then allow us to beat the fuck out of you and steal this child. That was the only other thing that kind of scratched my head is that the innkeeper just takes it upon himself to steal the child, bring him to the police. I get it. There's like $1,000 reward, but that was I think I'll chalk that up to it was the 20s, whatever. Um, I don't know why, but shaking the feather out of the angel wings made me laugh. He said, overall, glad I watched it. Never watched a silent film before. It reminded me of the Itchy and Scratchy legal battle Simpsons episode. Kind of forced you to pay attention to the plot because the movie is almost all action in a sense. Charlie Chaplin was fun. The kid did well for his part. Good pick, Hilty. So that is what Wilden said.
It's amazing how quickly he can get from one movie to The Simpsons. It's amazing.
I mean, that was one of the first things I thought of when I first watched this is the 1919 is when Itchy's first movie was. So I thought of that instantly. So
Okay.
I agree with Bolden
Yeah, sure.
fully on that. So Matt, you're up. What did you think of the kid?
All right. I've never seen it, obviously. I don't think I've ever seen a silent film before. Um, so first time for that. I agree with you, Tim. It was different. Not the music. The music I expected. I think I've seen enough pop culture references to understand that there's music the whole time. I thought there was like a placard of words like every 5 seconds in a
Right.
silent movie. Like I thought they were just like constantly showing words. So that was a little different because there were times like their mouth moved and I'm like, oh, they're going to show some words and then
And they
nothing.
don't. And then
And
they
I'm
don't.
like, okay, so but I do appreciate that back when you're doing these, like you had to the emotion, the emoting, if you will, and the acting like had to be pretty good for people to understand what the heck you were trying to get across. Because you didn't have words to do that other than at periodic times they would show certain things. So I do appreciate that. I thought everybody, for the most part, did a good job of conveying what they were trying to convey.
So
And when they didn't,
I'm
and when they
sorry to
didn't, yeah,
I'm gonna interrupt for just a second. So they probably had a script,
right,
right? Which is an
right,
odd thing to do for a movie where you're not going to be able to hear what they're saying.
yeah,
But you had to have a reason why you would be saying things. So there was a script that nobody ever actually gets to hear, which is I
Well,
hadn't
yeah.
thought about before, but that's odd.
have has anybody ever looked at or read an actual screenplay of anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of it isn't dialogue. It's
Yeah.
Right.
stage, it's, giving the actor notes on what the person is seeing, what the person is experiencing, and then also visually, kind of sets the stage for a lot of stuff. So it's not just dialogue for screenplay. Because you're right. What's the script gonna say? Like five lines here and there, like awkward ass and a bunch of other just random things, and that's really about it. But I think the thing back in the 20s, what they had to do is that they had to give the actors notes on how you're going to react. Like, for example, the screenplay, I'm sure, told Jackie Coogan, it's like, hey, you need to be like super upset that you're being separated from your father during this scene. Or you need to be like over the top ecstatic when they're reunited at the end. Um, different things like that, giving them cues on what they need to do. So, to your point, yeah, there's a little bit more to a screenplay than just the dialogue, which there's none here.
To Tim, to your point, you said something about Looney Tunes. It did, and I'm sure it's because they were art forms in the same times. But if you like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen like the old Christmas Santa cartoon with the workshop and the baby dolls. It's an old. I don't know if you guys. Anyway, that's what it reminded me, like the innkeeper and the black and white, and it reminded me of that. So I think that's probably purposeful. I'm sure the one way or the other, the cartoons followed that form or vice versa. Um, I thought like I said, even without words, I thought they did a really nice job getting the message across. I think Hilty said they didn't really waste a minute here, or maybe that was Tim. They didn't waste a minute. I mean, it was 53, 54 minutes long, and they got the whole thing done, which pisses me off because now movies are like 3 hours long and they have two sequels afterwards. So it's like, really, we can't get this done in an hour and a half. We got to go 3
Oppenheimer
hours.
is 3
Yeah.
hours.
And it was a lot of story. I mean, from the delivery to the dropping off, the car getting stolen, him finding, I mean, there was a lot happening.
Right. I mean, they did skip ahead a few years, right?
Yeah, they gave you the 5 year, but
because they're not going to watch him raise his son, which would have probably been kind of boring, but also kind of interesting. Like, how did this guy actually survive with a baby? But anyway, no, I thought it was good. It made me interested because I've heard of and now of course I can't think of the name, so I've definitely heard of it. So one of the other Charlie Chaplin movies, not the Dictator one that I've heard of, but oh my gosh, I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So it kind of made me interested. Like, I wonder if this is one of the better ones or if this is just, I know it was his first one, so maybe anyway, so it made me interested to watch some of his other stuff and see how it is. Some other stuff you guys hit on. The dream sequence, I thought he died. I'm like,
so
oh,
did
he
I at
died.
first.
He's dead. He's dead, and this is him going to heaven or whatever.
Died from a broken heart, being
Yeah,
separated from.
That's
right?
exactly what I thought.
Right. That was, and then him flying on the wires. That was funny. Yeah. What else? There was something else in there. It's just when he's fighting the orphanage guy in his house, and just I thought that was an interesting. The kid's just like frightened in the bed, and he's fighting along. Yeah. So I thought there was something else I was gonna say. I kept talking there to see if I would remember, and it didn't happen.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me say something that you
sure.
that you bring up here that should be part of this conversation. So you think about what you were trying to say. This we talk about that 5 year jump. It's so funny that nowadays we see movies and we're like, I could see this being done as a play, right? Because the first thing that we hear of a story generally at this point is a movie. But I mean, it was all theater that turned into motion pictures, like that's the history. So it's kind of fun thinking about this movie being, it wasn't like Charlie Chaplin people had perfected this art. He was actually playing around with an art form while he's making this and exploring what you can do now that you get to set up scenes and shoot it on film, as opposed to it's got to be a live performance of something that was a play, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that transition takes a long time over the timeline of movies to stop feeling theatrical and to become more dramatized in the art form itself. And just thinking about this being one of those really early ones, like this doesn't feel like it's supposed to be on a stage. It feels like it's supposed to be on reels, which is a really cool. I'm really impressed with. I'm so glad you picked this, Hilty, because I'm very impressed with this movie, much more so than I thought I would be. I hope you thought of your thing, man.
I did. So I don't know the answer to this, and maybe you guys do. So it says a new version. They reissued this in 1972. And Tim, you said Charlie Chaplin did the music anyway, but it says it reissued it with a new score. Is this the reissued version that we watched, to our knowledge?
I don't know. I read that too, and I don't know, but I don't think so. What happened is whoever owned the copyright let it lapse, and before it was supposed to, it went into what's that phrase that we used with Winnie the Pooh? You could start public domain, and a whole bunch of people started taking the film apart and making different versions of it, and it kind of spiraled to where you would think you're watching it, and you're watching a kind of a, when you videotape over a videotape over a videotape and a copy of a copy of a copy kind of thing. And I think that's why he did that in the 70s, was to give back an original version of it. That's what I got out of the little research that I did there.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I had seen that. Yeah, and I don't think I have anything else. As I keep talking to remember, but no, great pick. Definitely one of those that fits the bill of should have watched it by now. I think one of those original pieces that we probably should have seen. So good job.
When Tim was giving his supposition to give Matt some time to think, it reminded me of, because I went the opposite way. Tim's like, I could see this and like kind of go backwards and make it a play, and not exactly the same. But one thing I was thinking about was, it's been 100 years. How, and like, I would hope it would be tasteful, or, to me, it would be a good thing. I could see a million ways it would be bad. But how could somebody remake this in such a way and make it modern to where, like, maybe you get to what becomes the dream sequence and then it clicks. You're like, oh my God, this is the kid. For anybody, like, how far could you push it and make it modern and change the story, but keep all the key components? Yeah, I thought that'd be a fun
So
thing
what
to
you're
do.
asking is, would Big Daddy have been funny if it was an orphan instead of his friend's kid? That's what you're asking.
Nice.
Is that what I'm asking?
I think it is. I think it is.
Has
Would
this movie
Big
been-
Daddy still be funny if that kid was actually
Is
just left at
Big
his
Daddy
doorstep?
a remake of the kid?
Instead of the
might be.
pony, you got Scuba Steve.
It's
They take him back. He goes.
Right? He gets the kid, he raises him. He's kind of a odd. I mean, he's
Had
not
you thought
poor,
about
he's
that, or did
rich,
you
but
just come up with it while
I
was
just
talking?
came up with that when you were talking about
Bravo.
remakes. I'm like, oh, the kid and it's Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler could
got
be
that
the
one by
tramp.
me. Then I didn't see it was the kid.
No,
But yeah, that's great. Or something like that. But that you're right. That's good. That's funny.
So I took a look. There are three, like, quote unquote remakes of this. The first one is a Turkish remake called Poor. Okay. It's from the 80s. It doesn't seem that well received, but that's out there. There is a version in Hong Kong in 1999 that is an hour and 50 minutes long. Like, what else are you adding in here
wow.
that
Dialogue.
dialogue, backstory, those, that edited cut
Five
which
missing
has
years.
the 5 years and all that
Well,
stuff.
Hilty,
Oh, that's
I
true.
read somewhere that the ratio of film that he took to shots that made it into this movie is 52-1.
Yeah, like
He shot
That's-
52 times as much film. So I don't know. Maybe they found the film.
maybe it's possible. But no, to your point though, with that is Charlie Chaplin went to like great lengths to edit this, because he was in a dispute with the studio regarding this, because the studio back in the 20s, they paid you by reel. They didn't pay you by like picture. And this, like, I want to make something clear as well, is that this is Charlie Chaplin's like first like longer movie, quote unquote. Um, by the time The Kid came out, Charlie Chaplin almost had 80 performances under his belt on film. So, um, The Kid is just his first one that is longer and is more of a feature length, and even so, it's not even an hour. The 1972 or the 70s remake, or the recut of it, is over an hour long, but whatever. It is what it is about that. But that's actually part of the editing as well, is that part of the way that they edit this and they have those transitions is so that it can also indicate when it's time to switch the reel as well. So that's part of the reason why they do that, because this movie was 6 reels. They wanted to pay Charlie Chaplin for only like 2 or 3 reels. So Charlie Chaplin was like, okay, well, I'm gonna just edit this for a while until you all get your heads out of your ass and pay me what I'm due for this. So because 2 reels would get you $500,000, and then he waited it out until he eventually got to the 6 reels, and studio paid him $1.5 million. And they should have, because this movie was also at the time a massive commercial success. as well. This was the second highest grossing movie in 1921. The first one is not this, but this movie made about, I think it's either $2 million or $4 million on a $249,000 budget. So this was a massive hit for the studio for this.
I
I'd
hear
have
good
paid
things about
2
it like
bits
this.
to see it 10 times.
Yeah. Oh, and then there's one other remake, 2015. That one's 49 minutes long. This is a close remake of it because it's just got talking. It's in black and white. A lot of elements are similar. I haven't watched any of them, but those exist. So if anyone wants to check those out, they can.
4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Right.
$9 million supposedly is what it made in 1921, which seems like a lot of money.
It
Yeah.
seems like a lot of money for the 20s. But
That's the not this movie.
Yeah.
all right.
Rudolph Valentino. That sounds famous.
That name sounds important.
That name sounds famous.
I'm just Matt Smith, but this Valentino guy.
Brian, go ahead, take us home. What'd you think?
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. First time seeing a silent movie. And yeah, you knocked it out of the park with a movie we should have seen so far as a movie group. A lot of stuff has already been said, so I don't have much to say. It would just reiterate what you guys have already said. I did write down how many times can you hit a man with a brick? Because that was a lot of times you got hit in the head. And
but he's got all those sweaters. He's got all those
Yeah.
sweaters protecting him, though. So maybe he's got some stuff. Maybe he had a couple helmets that just we couldn't see or something like that. Maybe those got edited out in post.
Sure. CGI. It was all CGI. It was funny because I noticed in a few scenes there was a lot of flies on people and on paper, and it's like you don't see that nowadays on the outside shooting. They don't have a lot of insects that get left in shots, or I don't know if they CGI them out or they just somehow the magic of being on a set, they don't get insects. But I just noticed a few spots where there was just a ton of flies on people. Whenever people get sped up and run, the Benny Hill music goes on in my head. I can't help it.
Right.
But
Right.
I just you asked a question I didn't get a chance to answer because Tim rambled on forever about stuff. But
Silent.
I think a movie, The Champ, with John Voight and Ricky Schroeder, that was a really good child acting spot. And then Shirley Temple. I mean, you want to talk about a kid who carried movies on her own. She did a lot of musical numbers in Heidi and such that were just some really good movies for a child actor. But Coogan, though, wow, that kid was just amazing. And you actually felt like, yeah, I believe Aaron was talking about the scene in the back of the car, but when he's just like, please, Dad, please, and there's dialogue in these scripts because you just don't hear it. But there were times where he was saying, please, Dad, please, Dad. There was a time where the producer, I'm guessing, of whatever play the mother was in came in, and he was just, marvelous. So there's dialogue, you just don't hear it. And then if there's important dialogue, then like awkward ass, then they put that on a placard. So I enjoyed the scene with the pancakes where he stops him from eating the syrup with the knife, not because he stops him from eating the syrup, but just to tell him to lick the dull end, not the sharp
Use
end.
the other
Yeah, he
side.
flips it over.
Life lessons. Life lessons.
So, and the pile of food of whatever that was that he put on the night. It was like, holy crap. And then they eat it all. I mean, it was like, yeah. So no, I just what a well done movie. It was a treat to watch it. Thank you, Hilty. I appreciate it. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about it.
Brian, that food that you brought up, for some reason, I'm pretty sure even if this was a color film, it still would have been gray on the plate.
I've seen that at a diner. You can order that at a diner down the street.
I'm very glad everybody enjoyed it. Just highly encourage you that if you ever get the chance, Charlie Chaplin movies, a lot of them aren't that long. Check out more of them, especially the ones where he does get to speak in them, because Charlie Chaplin, I don't think we're ever going to get somebody as talented as him ever again, probably. But
One of the
yeah,
things I remember him doing was it's called the Dance of the Rolls from Gold Rush,
mm,
where he's got the bread rolls on the forks. That's what I've always remembered about him. And I've seen part of the Great Dictator speech, but
mm.
uh, yeah, just the physical comedy that he was, comedian that he was, is just I don't know many better.
I mean, I don't know a whole lot of people who can do that today. Like there are some out there who can do that, because I think probably Jim Carrey at the height of his powers probably was pretty high up there. But is there anybody else that anybody thinks does really well with physical comedy nowadays?
Well, I got a question, Tim. Hang on. I saw you going. Um, I think it's from this era. I think it's Buster Keaton. He's a
Mhm.
silent film. Is he the one that does the famous scene you see where the front of the house falls off and like the window of the house goes right over him? Is that a Buster Keaton thing? Does
I
anybody
don't
even know
know.
what I'm talking about?
I know that
I know the house scene. I don't know if
Okay.
it's Buster Keaton.
And I think Buster Keaton's the one, I think I get him confused because there's another one where he's on a clock and he's like hanging from the arms and time's changing and he's going to slip or whatever. So from this time period, I think whoever I'm thinking of, if it's not Buster Keaton, would, kind of fit into that.
Believe it is Buster Keaton. I think you're right. Yeah.
But the only other thing, and I want to say it could have been 2 years ago, but it seems recently because not a whole lot changes with um, Charlie Chaplin, is I don't know if it's a short. I don't know much about his movies, but there's one where he's roller skating on a broken balcony and he keeps coming like super close to the edge. And I just found out recently that there was actually zero danger. That was all done with like a huge painting and forced perspective. So like for a long time, I thought like it was similar to the Buster Keaton thing where like he's living on the edge to make these movies. Like if that window doesn't fall right over him, or if two of those wheels go off that edge, he's falling a floor. And then it's like, no, there's actually no drop at all. He could have just skated right over onto the glass that it was painted on. So, but I don't know if you know the movie I'm referring to. I don't know the name of it.
I know the scene you're talking about, but I don't know what movie it's from.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
short.
Other than the rolls, the dancing rolls, I think the roller skating one is the one I've seen the most when they bring up Charlie Chaplin. So you would think I might have an idea of what the name of it is, but I don't.
So two things to answer your question. I'm going to throw out John Ritter. When he was on Three's Company, he was a physical comedian for sure, and pretty good at it. His was like Jim Carrey, over the top though, like Jim Carrey's physical comedy is over the top, and you can't stop watching because it's so fantastic. Where this Charlie Chaplin seemed to be graceful and in control. And I wonder, the other point I was going to make is I wonder if that's not kind of a product of the time of what your limitations were as an artist. You know what I mean? Like there's Keystone Cop stuff and there's like you're talking about Buster Keaton, Aaron. And then think about Abbott and Costello. A lot of their stuff was funny, but it was also had to be physical comedy because you didn't really have CGI or special effects available to you. So they probably had to be good at that kind of, how can I say, like professionalism as an artist, as an actor, a comedic actor. You had to be able to pull that stuff off.
Modern Times was the movie he did with the roller skating, Aaron.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's all I have. Just a plea to all of you is that check out more Charlie Chaplin stuff, and also, just give more silent films a chance. They give a little bit more insight for us into, you know, this is where Hollywood was before, and now we're at these, big gaudy monstrosities of movies that, can't hold our attention and don't have as much, as much to say. So, yeah, just encourage everyone check out more Charlie Chaplin movies. You know, some of the highlights. There's one, Gold Rush. Modern Times is considered like one of the greatest movies ever made. I would highly encourage anyone watch The Great Dictator as well. Like that speech is iconic. And also that speech, a lot of it was also ad-libbed as well. So check it out. Back to you, Tim. What are you doing?
I believe what just happened is upstairs my wife ground her coffee beans with the coffee grinder, and it's quite loud. You can hear it from several rooms away.
Before we
Okay.
close it out, Tim, if that's what
Yeah.
you were going to do.
Nope. Yeah, go ahead.
The technical stuff, and I think, Matt had brought it up. Tim, you touched on it before. Some of the parallels to what came first, what we grew up on, the Looney Tune stuff. And I know a lot of those shorts were, even before black and white, were cut in between these. Maybe you'd go, I don't know how short his other films were. Maybe you'd sit and see 3 different movies. And then there'd be cartoons in between while they were changing reels or whatever. But the shot, I think it's shortly after the mom puts the baby in the car, and then she's in the park and she walks away from the camera, and you got that black. Started off as, I wondered how they did that back then. The circle, the technical ability of one, how it got smaller right on her. She stayed center of that circle the whole time. I thought that was really good. And probably hard to do because whatever was blocking the camera was probably physical. Somebody was pushing it in or whatever. And just, where did that come from? Those kind of transitions, did they exist before him, or was this the invention of that? Was it that the first time? Those kind of things would be cool to know. Did he invent that push in, frame change, wipe, whatever you want to call it? I don't know. That stuff's cool.
Totally agree. I looked up once what was the first movie ever made, and I want to say it. And Mike, maybe you know this stuff because we just depend on you as the movie expert. But I thought it was 1913, but maybe it's like 1903.
Matt has his
Matt,
hand
do you
up.
have this?
No, I'm sorry. I'm flexing my fingers.
Totally looked like he was raised. Guys, I know this. I've known this forever.
Sorry. I'll go off screen and flex my
Yeah,
fingers.
no, it's okay. It's okay. But
Is
the
it
first
that it's like a 5 or 7 minute movie that people are on a spaceship that hits the moon in the eye?
Oh, Man
it's
in the
really
Moon?
weird. Yes. I've looked.
That's like 19. I think you're right. 1903.
Okay.
So I took a look, and according to multiple sites, it says the first motion picture ever recorded is widely considered to be called Roundhay Garden Scene, and it's filmed in 1888.
Okay, that's not the one I was
Well,
thinking.
they're
of.
wrong.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. You
then
can't
there's
trust
the
stuff on the
whole-
internet, Mike. Larson's no.
There's the whole story of Edison creating the motion picture film camera, and basically having complete control of everything it was used for. So that's why California became the Mecca, because somebody stole a couple cameras, took off to California. When Edison would send Pinkertons out there looking for them, they'd hide in the California mountains or whatever, and they couldn't, wouldn't be found. And then they would come back and make films after the,
Looks
coast
like
was clear.
Looks like the oldest full-length movie was 1906 in Australia. The Story of the Kelly Gang.
Oh, okay. Ned Kelly.
1906, 70 minutes long.
I like that story.
Ned and his
brother
brothers.
Keith.
Yeah. Daryl and his other brother
Me and
Daryl.
Brian went the same route. Yeah, Tim, you know exactly what the movie was about.
There's
I'm
several
also
movies
reading
about Ned Kelly.
I'm also seeing that like before even that, that movie that I said, something that is widely regarded as the first like sequence of like pictures brought together to be brought to life was a guy riding a horse. It's called The Horse in Motion. It's made in 1878. So
Well, I think that's one of those, you look through a window and you spin the little thing and it's moving in front of you.
yeah, maybe.
They have a name. I can't think of it.
Well,
But,
I like that we
even
went on the Wayback Machine here. I like
right
the
before
history
this,
of
there were,
movies.
Nickelodeons and stuff that you'd, put your face up and reel the thing, and a set of images would appear to be in motion.
Mhm. All right.
Oh, there you go.
Does that close our conversation on The Kid, 1921? Anybody got anything else? Really, really great pick and
Great
fun
pick.
conversation. I will be watching some more of Charlie Chaplin stuff. I'm really glad I got an opportunity to do that. Okay, so we're moving on to another theme. I asked Mike Wilden if he was going to be here, if he wanted to pick rewatchable. I figured we go in the order that we normally go with just the three of you guys. So that would be Mike and then Aaron and then Hilty. But he told me he wasn't going to be here, so he wasn't up for that. So I'm going to go on with the theme that I've been toying around with. We're going to do the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Nice.
So here's how I figured we would do this. I'm going to pick a Kevin Bacon movie, and then Dan will be next. And it's almost like it's dealer's choice. You just got to be able to connect it to this movie in 6 moves. So you have to tell us the 6 moves, and they have to be actors. So from the movie that I pick, Dan will have to put the thread together to get to his movie. You can have less than 6, but you got to be able to put it together within 6. And then if Hilty at the end of this has any integrity at all, he'll bring us back with another Kevin Bacon movie. That's not a requirement, but
It's awfully sounds like it's a requirement.
But it's a challenge, though. It's a
Don't
challenge.
tread on me. What is going on?
So, well, you're the one that claims to have seen every movie ever made. So
I have not claimed
twice.
that at all.
twice, yeah, twice. So in that realm, starting off with Kevin Bacon, I thought I would finally pick A Few Good Men. But then I figured we'd just start the conversation now, and nobody needs to watch it. So I went looking through 2 lists. One, what are the best Kevin Bacon movies? And a whole bunch of them came up. And then I just went to his entire, however many movies there are, list that he's credited with. And I decided to go with his first screen appearance, the classic 1978 National Lampoon's Animal House is what we'll be watching this week.
Nice.
So we will launch into the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon with Animal House, and Dan's up next. So there you go.
So would it put your tit right in a ringer if we all pick Kevin Bacon movies?
Not at all. Not at all. And thank you for the phrase "tit in the ringer." I haven't heard that in quite some time.
It is on Peacock.
It's on Peacock. All right.
I think I own this on DVD somewhere.
Yes, probably.
To go search in the basement somewhere. I think I have it.
Yeah. Ask a couple uncles. They'll have it.
Yeah.
Somebody will have it.
That'll do it for this episode of the BTB Movie Club podcast. Thank you as always for listening. We know we enjoyed ourselves. We hope you did too. Have yourself a great week. We are partnered with the SPDM Crew Podcast Network.